A biscuit with tea may seem harmless, but for adults over 50, what sits inside that packet can be more complicated than it appears. Behind familiar brands, nostalgic packaging, and reassuring supermarket placement, there are often hidden amounts of sugar salt, processed fats, and other ingredients that can work against long-term health. Many of Britain's most trusted biscuits are marketed as comforting, traditional, or even wholesome, yet their nutritional profiles tell a very different story. In this guide, we look at 9 biscuit brands that are best avoided and 2 alternatives that are actually worth considering. At number 9 is McVitie's Digestives. For more than 130 years, McVitie's has presented itself as a classic British brand associated with reliability, tradition, and comfort. Even the word digestive creates the impression of something mild, sensible, and perhaps even beneficial. The brown packaging reinforces that image of wholesomeness, but the reality is less reassuring. A single McVitie's Digestive contains around 2.3 grams of sugar. That may not sound particularly high in isolation, but most people do not stop at one biscuit. 3 digestives, which many would consider a modest serving with afternoon tea, deliver close to 7 grams of sugar. That is already a notable proportion of the recommended daily sugar intake for adults, consumed almost without thinking. Sugar is only one part of the concern. McVitie's Digestives also contain palm oil, an ingredient often associated with increased LDL cholesterol, the kind that contributes to arterial buildup and places extra strain on the cardiovascular system. For older adults already managing blood pressure or taking cholesterol-lowering medication, that hidden fat load can work quietly against their treatment. There is also the issue of sodium. Each biscuit contains about 0.2 grams of salt. Again, that seems modest on its own, but it adds up quickly over the course of the day, especially for those with kidney conditions or anyone advised to limit sodium intake. Another concern is acrylamide, a compound that forms naturally when starchy foods are baked at high temperatures. Food safety authorities have warned that long-term exposure may raise cancer risk, and biscuits, including digestives, are among the foods where acrylamide has been highlighted as a concern. The product is marketed as a careful, sensible choice, yet it can deliver sugar salt and problematic fats in a way that feels far more harmless than it really is. At number 8 is Lotus Biscoff. With its caramelized crunch, warm spiced flavor, and strong presence in coffee shops and premium gift hampers, Biscoff has built an image of continental elegance and artisanal quality. It feels more sophisticated than an ordinary biscuit, which is part of what makes it so deceptive. A single Biscoff biscuit contains roughly 2 grams of sugar. 2 biscuits with coffee provide around 4 grams, and a second serving, which is easy to reach for because of the flavor and texture, quickly doubles that figure. For anyone managing type 2 diabetes or trying to control blood glucose levels, this is a significant hidden sugar source. The caramelization that gives Biscoff its distinctive taste also creates another issue: elevated acrylamide levels. Repeated testing has shown that caramelized biscuits often rank among the highest in acrylamide within the biscuit category. Its deep amber color may look appetizing, but it is also a visible sign of a darker bake associated with higher acrylamide formation. The fat profile raises further concerns. Biscoff contains a blend of vegetable oils including palm oil and rapeseed oil. For older adults monitoring cholesterol or recovering from heart-related conditions, these fats may contribute to long-term arterial strain. Sodium is present too at about 0.1 grams per biscuit, which can still become a problem over multiple servings. The product's upscale image hides the fact that the ingredients are essentially industrial sugar flour oils, sugar syrup raising agents, and salt. The texture itself is designed to encourage repeated eating. That quick snap and immediate melt on the tongue create a highly rewarding eating experience that makes moderation harder than it seems. At number 7 are Maryland cookies. Maryland has long been a familiar name in biscuit tins across Britain, often associated with family visits, childhood snacks, and the promise of real chocolate chips. Their cheerful packaging and chunky cookie appearance make them feel indulgent in a friendly, harmless way. But nutritionally, they can be far more problematic, especially for older adults. A single Maryland cookie contains about 2.5 grams of sugar. The recommended serving is 2 cookies, which already gives around 5 grams of sugar, but most people eat 3 or 4 at a time. That can push sugar intake toward 10 grams in a single sitting, producing a rapid spike in blood glucose, followed by an energy crash. The chocolate chips are another point of concern. In many cases, Maryland uses compound chocolate rather than chocolate made with cocoa butter. Compound chocolate relies on vegetable fats, often palm oil, which are cheaper but generally less desirable from a cardiovascular perspective. Saturated fat content is also significant. Each cookie contains roughly 1.3 grams of saturated fat, meaning that 4 cookies can provide over 5 grams. For older adults already dealing with cholesterol issues, heart disease, or medications like statins, this becomes a meaningful burden. Sodium is present as well at around 0.1 grams per cookie, and it accumulates quietly across multiple servings. There have also been consumer complaints about inconsistent product quality, including stale or unexpectedly soft batches. That may sound like a simple quality issue, but for more vulnerable consumers, compromised freshness can be more than just disappointing. Maryland trades heavily on nostalgia and family familiarity, yet the product itself has evolved more toward cost efficiency than toward health-conscious quality. That gap between emotional trust and actual nutritional value is exactly what makes it risky. At number 6 on the list is Fox's Crinkle Crunch. Fox's is a brand that leans heavily on its long history dating back to 1853, and that heritage gives the product an aura of tradition, craftsmanship, and trust. Crinkle Crunch, with its ridged texture and buttery flavor, appears to be a more premium choice than many standard biscuits. But, once again, the ingredient profile tells a less comforting story. A 2-biscuit serving contains approximately 8 grams of sugar, which is already a significant amount for something many people would view as a light snack. For older adults managing blood sugar or diabetes, that is not a trivial load. The fat content is equally concerning. These biscuits contain butter, which sounds familiar and harmless enough, but they also include palm oil. Together, these ingredients contribute around 2.7 grams of saturated fat per serving. For anyone with elevated cholesterol or a history of cardiovascular issues, that amount adds to the long-term burden on arterial health. Salt is present too at roughly 0.2 grams per serving, and while that may not look alarming on paper, the problem with biscuits is rarely one serving alone. Repeated snacking throughout the day turns minor figures into cumulative intake that matters. The biscuits also contain soy lecithin, an emulsifier commonly used in processed foods. While often considered safe, some research has raised questions about whether certain emulsifiers may disturb gut bacteria balance in ways that promote inflammation. For older adults already coping with digestive sensitivity or chronic inflammatory conditions, that possibility makes the product less appealing. The ridged texture and buttery mouthfeel are carefully engineered to encourage repeated eating, while the official portion size on the packet often bears little resemblance to how people actually consume the product. At number 5 are Cadbury Fingers. Cadbury enjoys a particularly strong level of trust in Britain, built through decades of branding nostalgia and the emotional association of its purple packaging with comfort and familiarity. Cadbury Fingers in particular seem elegant and restrained. Their slim shape suggests they are a modest indulgence rather than an especially rich or excessive one. But that impression can be misleading. A serving of 5 Cadbury Fingers contains around 8 grams of sugar. Because the biscuits are narrow and easy to eat in quick succession, 5 pieces can disappear almost without notice. For older adults monitoring blood glucose, this becomes a deceptive sugar spike hidden behind the illusion of smallness. Saturated fat is also significant with around 3.2 grams in that same 5-finger serving. The chocolate coating contains vegetable fats, including palm oil derivatives, which can work against cardiovascular health over time. Beneath the chocolate, the biscuit itself contributes more fat and sugar, creating a product that feels light in the hand but lands heavily in metabolic terms. Sodium is present as well, roughly 0. 3 grams per 5-piece serving, which can become relevant for those managing blood pressure or kidney concerns. Cadbury fingers are also designed around sequence and repetition. Their shape encourages a rhythm of reaching for one, then another, and another, making it very easy to consume more than intended. This is not accidental. It is a form of product design that promotes overconsumption while still allowing the brand to present the biscuit as refined and controlled. The emotional trust many people place in Cadbury often obscures the fact that the nutritional profile is far less gentle than the branding suggests. At number 4 are hobnobs. Hobnobs occupy an unusual space in the biscuit world because they appear heartier and more substantial than digestives. Their visible oats and rough texture imply fiber wholesomeness and a kind of rustic honesty. Many consumers see them as a sturdier, more satisfying alternative to lighter biscuits. The oats are real, but what surrounds them is what should raise concern. A single hobnob contains around 8 grams of sugar, and 3 biscuits, a very common serving with tea, deliver more than 8 grams. The chocolate-coated variety contains even more, approaching 4 grams of sugar per biscuit. For older adults, managing diabetes or pre-diabetic blood sugar levels, that represents a substantial glycemic load hidden inside a product that feels almost healthy. The oat content does provide some fiber, but not nearly enough to offset the accompanying fat and sugar. Each hobnob contains about 1.6 grams of saturated fat, and the chocolate versions are higher still. Palm oil also appears on the ingredient list alongside butter and vegetable oils, creating the same cholesterol-related concerns seen in several other mainstream biscuits. Salt runs at about 0. 2 grams per biscuit, which again may seem modest until multiplied over repeated servings across the week. The biscuit's texture is also part of the deception. Its rough surface, dense bite, and ability to hold together when dunked in tea create the impression of something more natural and less processed. In reality, that texture is the product of food engineering designed to maximize satisfaction and encourage continued consumption. There have also been reports of inconsistent freshness, with some batches arriving softer than expected, suggesting moisture intrusion during storage or transport. For more vulnerable consumers, reduced freshness is not only disappointing, but can also signal declining product quality. At number 3 are Jammy Dodgers. Few biscuits trade on nostalgia as strongly as Jammy Dodgers. The heart-shaped cutout, the bright red jam center, and the playful branding all suggest innocence, fun, and harmless childhood pleasure. Many older adults continue buying them out of habit memory or to share with grandchildren. But behind that cheerful appearance lies a product dominated by sugar. A 2-biscuit serving contains approximately 6 grams of sugar, much of it concentrated in the jam filling. For anyone managing blood glucose or type 2 diabetes, that jam-filled center represents a rapid sugar delivery system disguised as a playful snack. The jam itself is also worth scrutiny. It includes glucose-fructose syrup, a highly processed sweetener that the body handles differently from naturally occurring sugars in fruit. Some studies have suggested that regular intake of glucose-fructose syrup may contribute to insulin resistance and fatty liver development over time. For older adults already under metabolic strain, that makes it a poor choice. Saturated fat is present as well, with around 2 grams per serving, and palm oil contributes to the overall fat profile. Salt is lower than in some other brands at around 0.15 grams per serving. But, as with all biscuits, repeated consumption is what turns a minor amount into a meaningful one. Jammy Dodgers also carry the weight of emotional trust. The brand relies on childhood familiarity and bright, friendly imagery to keep its place in biscuit tins, even though the product itself offers very little nutritional value and increasingly reflects cost-driven industrial formulation rather than quality improvement. At number 2 are Oreos. Oreos were once seen in Britain as an imported novelty, something associated with American snack culture rather than the traditional British biscuit aisle. But over time, Mondelez International pushed the brand aggressively into the UK market, and now Oreos sit on supermarket shelves everywhere, competing directly with long-established local brands. Their marketing is powerful and carefully designed. The twist lick dunk ritual, the playful tone, the sense that the biscuit is fun, indulgent, and almost impossible to resist. For older adults, however, Oreos are less playful than they appear. They are a highly concentrated combination of sugar fat, refined ingredients, and food engineering designed for repeat consumption. A standard serving of 3 Oreos contains about 14 grams of sugar. That is more than 3 teaspoons from just 3 relatively small biscuits. For older adults dealing with pre-diabetes, diabetes, or blood sugar instability, this is an especially problematic amount. The sugar load is delivered quickly and with very little satiety, in return making it easy to consume more before the body has even responded. Saturated fat adds to the concern with roughly 2.3 grams per serving. Oreos are made using a blend of palm and rapeseed oils, which, while not marketed as trans fats, still create a fatty profile that can work against long-term cardiovascular health. The cream center sounds indulgent and dairy-rich, but in practice it is not cream in any meaningful nutritional sense. It is a processed mixture of sugar, vegetable oils, and flavorings engineered to mimic richness and create a satisfying mouthfeel. Salt is present too at around 0.3 grams per serving, adding another hidden contribution for people trying to manage hypertension or kidney-related concerns. The product is also extremely processed. The uniformity of each biscuit, the precise thickness, the identical cream layer, and the consistent snap all reflect a manufacturing system optimized for shelf life, appearance, and repeatability rather than nourishment. That engineering is part of what makes Oreos so effective at encouraging habitual consumption. Every detail is designed to deliver the same sensory reward every time. For older adults trying to snack more consciously, that consistency becomes a problem rather than a benefit. Oreos look harmless, but they function as a highly efficient delivery system for sugar and processed fats. At number 1 are bourbon creams. Among all the biscuits on this list, bourbon creams may be the easiest to overlook, and that is exactly what makes them especially concerning. They are ordinary, inexpensive, and widely available, appearing in supermarket, own brand ranges, office biscuit tins, family gatherings, and waiting rooms across Britain. They do not call attention to themselves. They do not present as indulgent or premium. They simply exist in the background of daily life, which means people often reach for them automatically without questioning what is actually inside. For older adults whose health depends increasingly on paying attention to small dietary choices, that ordinary familiarity can be dangerous. A standard 2-biscuit serving of bourbon creams contains roughly 6 grams of sugar, but in real life, they are rarely eaten just 2 at a time. 4 biscuits, which is a much more realistic serving, deliver around 12 grams of sugar. That approaches half the recommended daily sugar limit for many adults, all from a snack that can disappear in minutes with tea. For anyone managing diabetes, insulin resistance, or general blood sugar control, this is a serious metabolic load disguised as something trivial. The chocolate flavor is another point of deception. In most cases, bourbon creams are not made with real chocolate in any meaningful premium sense. Instead, the flavor comes from cocoa powder mixed with sugar vegetable fats and emulsifiers to create the impression of chocolate without its quality or its potential antioxidant benefits. The saturated fat content is also high. A 2-biscuit serving contains around 3 grams of saturated fat, which means 4 biscuits can provide approximately 6 grams. For older adults concerned with cholesterol arterial plaque or cardiovascular disease progression, that is a substantial burden from a snack that offers no meaningful nutritional upside. Palm oil is prominent in bourbon creams across multiple brands, adding to the concern from both a health and ingredient quality perspective. Salt is typically around 0.2 grams per serving, which may seem modest until repeated across the week. The cream filling itself is heavily processed, usually including glucose syrup-hardened fats and artificial flavorings. The biscuit portion is based largely on refined flour sugar and fat. In other words, there is very little here beyond calories, carbohydrates, and ingredients that work against long-term metabolic and cardiovascular health. Bourbon creams are not dangerous because they are dramatic. They are dangerous because they are ordinary enough to escape scrutiny. After looking at the 9 brands to avoid it, becomes clear that not all biscuits are equal. Some brands do make an effort to keep ingredients simpler, fat profiles cleaner, and sugar levels more moderate. The first, safer option is Nairn's Oat Biscuits. Nairn's has built its reputation on straightforward formulations and a stronger emphasis on ingredient transparency. Whole grain oats are the primary ingredient, which means the product delivers genuine fiber rather than just a token amount hidden beneath sugar and processed fat. The ingredient list is relatively short and easy to understand, typically including oats, sunflower oil sugar, and raising agents. Importantly, it avoids palm oil glucose fructose syrup and the kind of aggressive additive profile seen in many mainstream brands. Sugar content is considerably lower than in the products listed earlier. A 4-biscuit serving contains around 3.8 grams of sugar, which is less than half of what you might consume from Oreo's bourbon creams or some other mainstream options. For older adults trying to moderate blood glucose fluctuations, that difference matters. Saturated fat is also lower because Nairn's uses sunflower oil rather than relying on palm oil or butter-heavy formulations. The oats themselves provide soluble fiber, which has been associated with benefits such as helping reduce LDL cholesterol and supporting steadier blood sugar levels. For older adults already managing cholesterol or diabetes, that makes Nairn's a biscuit that aligns more closely with health goals instead of quietly undermining them. The brand also offers gluten-free variants and simpler ingredient ranges for people with particular dietary needs, further reinforcing its reputation for transparency and practicality. The second recommended option is Border Biscuits Dark Chocolate Gingers. Border Biscuits has remained a family-owned Scottish business since 1984, and that independent identity helps shape the brand's focus on more traditional baking values while still adapting to modern health awareness. The dark chocolate gingers are positioned as an indulgent biscuit, but one built from more recognizable ingredients and a less aggressively processed profile than many mass-market alternatives. The dark chocolate coating contains actual cocoa content rather than a cheaper compound chocolate, based mainly on flavored vegetable fats. That matters because real dark chocolate offers a richer ingredient base and may provide flavonoids which have been linked to potential cardiovascular benefits. The ginger component adds something meaningful as well. Ginger is widely recognized for its anti-inflammatory qualities and its potential to support digestive comfort. For older adults dealing with mild digestive issues or inflammation-related conditions, that makes it more than just a flavor note. Sugar is still present, and this is not a sugar-free health food, but the balance of ingredients and the more satisfying flavor profile make it easier to fit into a sensible diet in moderate quantities. The ingredient list is clearer and shorter than many supermarket biscuits, typically including flour butter, sugar, dark chocolate stem, ginger eggs, and raising agents. There is no palm oil, no glucose fructose syrup, and no reliance on artificial colors or flavors. Order Biscuits also maintains clearer allergen information and a reputation for reliable quality control, both of which matter for older adults with sensitivities or dietary restrictions. Taken together, these two safer options show that the biscuit category does not have to be dominated by highly processed, sugar-heavy products. There are still brands that rely on more transparent ingredients, more moderate formulations, and a more respectful relationship with the consumer. The difference is not just marketing. It is visible in the ingredient list, in the fat source, in the sugar level, and in whether the product supports or undermines health goals. For older adults especially, these distinctions become increasingly important. The biscuits to avoid on this list are not dangerous because of one dramatic ingredient alone. They are risky because they combine sugar-processed fats, salt, and ultra-processed design in ways that are easy to consume frequently and difficult to notice in the moment. That is why familiarity can be so misleading. In the end, the safest approach is to stop judging biscuits by branding nostalgia or packaging and start judging them by what they actually contain. Tradition, emotional memory, and supermarket visibility are not the same as quality. A biscuit that looks wholesome may still be loaded with sugar and palm oil. A biscuit served in a coffee shop may still be highly industrial. A biscuit remembered fondly from childhood may no longer reflect the recipe or standards people imagine. What matters is the ingredient list, the nutritional profile, and how the product fits into real health needs. The difference between a risky biscuit and a worthwhile one may look small on the shelf, but over time it can make a meaningful difference to blood sugar, heart health, and everyday well-being.